Sometimes it's just not your day.
You guys are so you guys are so I'm about to fucking leave.
Maybe you're not getting along with your teammates, or maybe you're getting absolutely stomped. Whatever the case may be, sometimes you need to decide. Is playing out the remainder of this match really worth your time? Luckily, most competitive games give you the option to surrender and quit.
Oh my god, I'm 11. Okay, I'm done. FF, I'm done.
We literally all tried to FF, just FF again. FF again, please, please, no, I'm trapped.
No. FF.
A failed 4-1 surrender vote in ranked had like a 97% loss rate. This is an extremely high number where like I saw it and I was like, as the guy who says no on the surrender vote, I get it, I accept.
So at what point is there no longer a reason to play out a match? Is it really worth it to try and fight an uphill battle and grind your way to an unlikely comeback? Or should you always just vote yes and GG go next?
Just FF. Go next. I don't care, FF.
Okay, so before we start talking about surrendering in some of your favorite games, check out our new merch collection, like our Onward and Forward shirt over at shop.thescore.com. All right, so most team-based competitive games offer some form of surrender or forfeiting feature. League of Legends, Valorant, CS2, Rainbow Six, hell, even Rocket League. Most games have some form of surrender mechanism for when things go wrong. Now, depending on the game, you usually have to wait until a certain point in the match before you're allowed to call the vote. For example, in League of Legends, it's time-based at 15 minutes, while in Valorant, it's any point beyond round 5. Some games, like Rocket League, are even willing to help save your weak mental sooner by allowing you to FF only a minute and a half into the match. Other games, like Street Fighter 6, require both players to vote on a no contest ruling if the server detects a bad connection. Now, in the world of esports, surrendering is actually pretty uncommon. When there's money on the line, you typically won't see teams just roll over and give up. But that's not to say that it's never happened before.
That's going to be Coro picking up a kill, and EDG are now 2 turrets deep, diving SKT in their base, 28-5, 30 minutes in.
EDG doing whatever they want at this point. The SKT forced to surrender. There was no way they're coming back there.
Surrendering in pro matches is extremely rare, and nowadays there's a good chance the teams would get fined for it due to all of these sponsorship obligations tied to each and every broadcast. It's technically allowed, but in recent years, most instances of teams forfeiting have been the result of a mistake or a misclick. Outside of Dota, at this point, players and teams just accept their fate and play out the remainder of a match, no matter how bad things look. But obviously, what the pros experience is very different than what you or I experience in our average everyday games. Players can throw up surrender votes in matchmaking, but depending on what game you play, the results of these votes can vary drastically. For example, in shooters like Valorant or Rainbow Six, you can still find ways to win even if your team is letting you down. So players might be hesitant to click yes, since solo carrying games is a lot easier compared to other genres. In Valorant in particular, round differential and personal performance can be a big factor when the game decides how much ranked rating you win or lose. This means that even if you feel the game is basically unwinnable, you may want to play it out just to minimize your losses. Of course, your hidden MMR also plays a role in all of this, but the point still stands.
In that perspective, you should always try in every game. You should not just give up. You should not just throw. If you are down 2-10, like try to finish like 7-11 maybe. It'll save some. It'll save some. If you're performing marginally worse than you usually do, then that's really gonna affect your MMR, really gonna affect your RR, really affect your mental for sure. Dude, think about it. You just gave up in a video game, bro. Come on now.
But then there's League of Legends.
Just FF. I don't want to play. 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 I don't want to play.
Oh, missing everything.
Ah, just go next and FF. Just go next and FF.
Literally everyone on the enemy team counter center. Irelia, Kane, Draven, Thresh, Cass. Well, I guess I don't get to play the game. Yeah, don't worry. It's okay. I don't care.
League of Legends is a frustrating game. It's sort of how it's built. Players have a lot less control and invest a lot more time into any single match compared to first-person shooters. And so League enjoyers are kind of known for having some of the weakest mental among competitive gamers. One little thing could go wrong and they'll just give up and run it down mid. Trust me, I've seen it happen a lot. But in April of last year, Riot made the decision to remove the unanimous early surrender requirement at 15 minutes. Now, this was actually sort of surprising to a large portion of the League community, but Riot had already been testing it out in normal queue for some months, and over that time amassed some pretty interesting data. League's lead game designer, Riot McCrossan, shared that 96.7% of ranked games with a failed 4-1 or 4-0 early FF vote were lost anyways. He also added that if a game ends before the 21-minute mark, roughly 90% of those are held hostage, with 45% FF'd at 20 minutes, while 50% end naturally by that time because teams simply open mid or lose. 80% of these games are resolved by the 25-minute mark, and once you hit 30+ minutes, games only have a 10% win rate. Those who stick it out past the 40-minute mark surprisingly win 45% of the time, but it's pretty uncommon for most matches to make it this far. Basically, what this means is that if you successfully FF at 15, you're more likely to win the game you're about to start than if the FF vote had failed. Now, some people respected Riot's decision to do this, and when you consider that a significant portion of League of Legends players pay by the hour to play at PC bongs, it makes sense that people would want to make the most of their time. Now, if a big chunk of your team agrees that the game is likely already lost, then you might as well just cut your losses, say GG, and go next, right? Well, even if these numbers show that FFing actually leads to winning more, there are those who don't agree with this idea of chronically giving up.
You're never going to learn how to win from behind if you never allow yourself to try. And I believe very much so that you have to give it a go. Sure, 97% of the time, you're probably going to fall flat on your face. That's fine. That happens. But you're never going to actually know what that limit is or where you can actually come back into it unless you 100% give it everything. And sure, you might fail to surrender at 15 and then lose at 17. That's the way the game goes sometimes. But I do think that sometimes the League of Legends player base just kind of goes a bit too defeatist sometimes and doesn't actually give themselves enough credit to kind of say, no, you're good enough at this game. You've played it for 10 years. You can bring this back if you just play smart. You just have to lock it in a little bit more. So yeah, I actually don't like the surrender vote sometimes.
Now, I think that's a very commendable mindset to have, and I try to adopt it in my own games. Never give up, never surrender, and all that jazz. But let's be honest for a second. This is League of Legends we're talking about. And when that surrender vote fails, people don't always want to play nice. Players can go to some pretty crazy extremes when the decision doesn't go their way. And to help break down a lot of the toxicity associated with League's matchmaking system, since I sure as hell don't want to talk about it, here is my good old pal, Colten.
And now, the guy who actually knows what he's talking about.
All right, League players, get so close right now. We need to have an intervention because some of y'all are so toxic that even someone just suggesting that you surrender is enough to send you off the deep end. You might give up and run it down, feeding the enemy and making the game feel even more unwinnable for your teammates. Some of you just disconnect and accept a penalty because you simply don't care anymore. You are so crazy that actual real scientists have put your toxicity under the microscope to try and understand why you might keep playing even when all seems lost. Back in November 2020, an assistant professor at the Penn State College of Information Sciences and Technology, Dr. Yubo Ku, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, published a case study titled Toxic Behaviors in Team-Based Competitive Gaming. There are two specific behaviors that he talks about in this paper that are directly related to the various ways that players react when they see a surrender vote. First is hostage holding, which describes purposefully keeping others in an unpleasant situation. Dr. Ko says that the most common instance of this behavior is toxic players making surrendering impossible for others. As in, rather than voting yes and going next, they vote no and keep you in the game with them. One of the players quoted in the study said, "The thing I hate most is that you have toxic players who refuse to surrender. Then I'm wasting time for no reason." Another player said that it is super frustrating when people hold their teammates hostage in a game. For instance, Smurfs on the winning side refuse to end the game for their own amusement. Example, getting more kills from less skilled opponents. And as someone who has definitely been on the other side of that, I have to agree, it definitely sucks being stuck in a game where you are clearly just getting smurfed on. The other behavior discussed in the paper is sabotaging, which includes two subtypes: blatant sabotaging and surreptitious sabotaging. Blatant sabotaging refers to conspicuous, conscious ways of decreasing or eliminating a team's chance to win. This includes going AFK, leaving mid-game, giving information to the enemy, and good old-fashioned running it down. One player said that their top laner died several times in a row and became so tilted that he decided to tell the enemy team where he was so that they could kill him. On the other hand, surreptitious sabotaging is when players intentionally put on a poor performance but pretend they're still trying so that they aren't perceived as toxic. The League community commonly refers to this as soft inting, and it includes things like ignoring team fights or deliberately missing abilities. Some even go for an Oscar and type fake apologies for their poor performance in team chat to make it look like they're new or just having a bad game. And all of this is only a small sample of what League players have unfortunately come to expect from toxic teammates. Riot plans to implement more changes to League's rank system in the near future to help players avoid situations where they enter negative LP states and start consistently losing more than they're gaining. But considering Riot's data regarding players being held hostage in-game, I hate to say it, but you'll probably be better off voting yes, going next, and saving your mental, rather than dealing with disgruntled, toxic players. Oh, and League players, while I've got you here, when that surrender vote goes through, I want you to close your eyes, count to 10, take a deep breath in, and forget about that game. Be the change you want to see on the Rift, and be nice in your next game, please.
And that was the guy who actually knows what he's talking about.
So what is the right thing to do the next time you're playing a game and one of your teammates calls a surrender vote? Well, as we've shown, the answer probably depends on what game you're playing, what's happening in that game, and what kind of person you are. If you're a attack FPS enjoyer, then perhaps playing out a few more rounds and seeing how things go isn't a bad idea. When you're playing a round-based game, then sometimes you can start stringing together some wins before pulling off that miraculous comeback. But if you're one of those unfortunate souls who plays ranked League of Legends, it's probably best that you just surrender, reset, and jump into another game. And maybe say a little prayer that this time your top laner will actually have their monitor turned on. Shit rock, shit on, shellacked. What's the one I've been using lately? Rinsed. I've really enjoyed rinsed. Guys, we're getting fucking rinsed right now.
The thing about rinsed is the active verb to washing.
Yeah,
like you're washed after you get rinsed.
It's true, yeah. It's true.
Lathered in there.
Yeah, getting lathered up.